Hello, hey Amy.
Hello. How's
Uh,
it going?
uh, just going, it's a busy October, is how I say it. And you're looking as fabulous as always. Love is in the air. um, I'm everyone, welcome to Empathy Power Up, your weekly 15-minute power boost of empathy. And this month in October, we've been focusing on generational trauma. And it's one of these incredible growth topics for me. And I'm learning so much. And Amy is doing incredible amounts of in-depth research and bringing this content. And so I'm excited. And I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk, just to recap where we the journey till today, where we talked a little bit about trauma and we talked a lot about stuckness, the idea of like when we do experience trauma, how do we get stuck and get free? We get frozen and we have these extreme reactions potentially, and it causes these moments where we are that over time these become sort of part of our bodies, and we try to protect ourselves. And then we talked about the concept of trauma ghosting, and I got to learn so much from Amy about it, and the idea that we sort of always have the sense around the corner there's something coming up, and we want to basically we keep feeling like there's some trauma coming in. And we talked about how all of that starts manifesting through generations and how it gets passed down from family to family. And the key insight from that was that when this strategy of trauma ghosting and us having to constantly think about there's a trauma around the corner, or that reliving that trauma, or we go through these kind of responses, that this same strategy gets internalized and passed down over generations within a particular group. And then it starts looking like a culture. And we talked about certain examples around that. And today I'm so excited to continue this learning journey together, and around talking about how trauma affects different types of bodies and how we're healing with trauma. So I'm excited, Amy. I'm all ears. I wanted to hear. So let's first learn about how trauma affects different types of bodies.
Absolutely. For the first off, I'm going to talk about so Resma Menachem is created this book called My Grandmother's Hands, and I have lots of quotes and amazingness that is coming for from last week and then this week that I'm bringing into the conversation. So certainly pick up his book and learn if this stuff sparks something in you. And I've gotten so many personal messages from people saying that this has really resonated with them, which has been incredible. I highly recommend reading his book. It's so accessible. So the first concept like I wanted to bring in today is there's three different kinds of bodies in particular that Resma talks about, and affects trauma affects these three different bodies in different ways. So he talks about white bodies, black bodies, and police bodies. And he all puts this under the umbrella, and this is particularly important in the United States, where we're both based out of. But in many areas around the world, there is discrimination. There is based on the color of their skin and policing, around the world. And so he actually talks about this as this concept of white body supremacy. Also, he calls it racialized trauma.
Mm.
So he says whether or not white body supremacy is formally or explicitly taught to us, it's in the air we breathe, the culture we share, and the bodies we inhabit. Because of white body supremacy, here is how white, black, and police bodies see each other. So the white body sees itself as fragile and vulnerable, and it
Mm.
looks to police bodies for safety and protection. It sees black bodies as dangerous and needing to be controlled, yet also as potential sources of service and comfort. The black body sees the white body as privileged, controlling, and dangerous. It is conflicted about the police body, which it sees as sometimes a source of protection, sometimes a source of danger, and sometimes both at once. And the police body sees black bodies as often dangerous and disruptive, as well as superhumanly powerful and impervious to pain,
Mm.
right? And
And
it's
that
fascinating.
impervious to pain is we see that not only in the, like you said, mentioned in the police bodies, but also in the medical. I've heard so many stories of people doctors and medical professionals not giving pain medication or recommendation to women with epidurals or something, because they don't this, and you see there's data to support everything that you've shared so far.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's obviously made many, many years of misinformation, disinformation, inequities and inequalities that have shown up in the systems that we're in, and there's so many different things that are shaping our views of this. But there's also something that like we're bringing up here is this concept of like trauma is also like you were recapping. Trauma shows up as culture, right? So if we're now having many years of trauma that we've experienced, we're going to be carrying that with us, and that's going to create a culture, and then that culture is going to become what people remember rather than individualized people. And I think that's really something to keep in mind as we talk about empathy, right? Often when empathy, we're trying to have empathy for a person and their personal experience, but it often gets clouded with this idea that this person is part of this bigger culture, and it's not always the case,
Mm,
obviously.
mm,
He brings up Resma brings up this amazing idea, and he says if you're a white American, your body has probably inherited a different legacy of trauma that affects white bodies, and at times may rekindle old fight, flight, or freeze responses. This
mm.
trauma goes back centuries, or at least as far back as the Middle Ages, and has been passed down from one white body to another for dozens of generations.
Yeah, that's such a powerful insight and sort of observation, I think. And I read that a couple of times in the show notes, and I what's so important to understand this is what this is doing, and I want people listening, is we're not trying to demonize white people. We're not trying to say this is the case. What we're trying to understand is understand the human experience, understand where we've come from. And this sort of does that in a really interesting way, is that this has been sort of become the culture and passed down. And so we don't even realize. And people who I've had different parts, like as growing up in India in a relatively privileged sort of class caste system thing. There's parts of that that's been passed out to me, and I can find relation in this statement, and I think that's what's important, is for us to recognize this, and that's what we're hoping to highlight. So thank you. This is incredibly insightful.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just like as I kept reading, it was like, my brain was exploding because he does a whole chapter on white bodies, black bodies, and one on police bodies. So this is just skimming the surface. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm saying like we can't do this justice as much as we had hoped we could. But I'm trying to bring out the best pieces. And so whether one group that we're in this whole world of different kinds of way trauma affects us, whether one group oppresses, victimizes, brutalizes, or marginalizes another, many of victimized people may suffer trauma and then pass that trauma response to their children as standard operating procedure, right? I talked about last week how it goes through the fetus and so on and so forth into future generations. Children are highly susceptible to this because their young nervous systems are easily overwhelmed about things that older, more experienced nervous systems are able to override. As we have seen, the result is a soul wound or intergenerational trauma. With the trauma continues for generation after generation, it is called historical trauma. Historical trauma has been likened to a bomb going off over and over again.
Oh,
So
wow.
that is, take that in, right? A bomb going off over and over again.
And I think that's fundamentally, if we talk about it, we're trying to understand that even like people who are like, I'm not racist and I care about these people and stuff. What we're trying to do is understand that there is this historical trauma, this cultural that become cultural, that's come from generation to generation. If we recognize that and we sort of understand it and try to undo it, that is true allyship. That is true, like, work that we can do to help change the system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Resma, as is the conclusion that I've come to, and why I think it's so important we're talking about this month, is that there is a way out of all of this, right? And the solution is that it begins with healing with your body.
This is where it's so exciting. So we've talked. I want us to make sure our audience sort of thinks about this. Take a moment to look inward. What is your historical trauma? All of us have that. All of us have been passed down with some level of this. What are the things? What are the traits that we believe and understand that is sort of we have to unlearn or understand? And so now I'm excited to learn how to heal that once we recognize
Yeah.
it.
So this is moving into healing from trauma. In order to heal from our bodies, we have to heal from our bodies and the collective body of our nation, he says. And all of us need to heal, and with the right guidance, all of us can. So trauma doesn't mean we're defective. In fact, it means just the opposite. Something happened to us, which is something we can heal from. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. There's nothing broken about us. We just have to look inward to look through this. So Resma talks about, as a therapist, that he's learned that when trauma is present, the first step in healing always involves educating people on what trauma is. And so that's what we've been doing with these past few weeks. Trauma is all about speed and reflexivity, which is why in addressing trauma, each of us needs to work through it slowly over time. We need to understand our body's process of connection and settling. We need to slow ourselves down and to learn and to lean into uncertainty rather than away from it. We need to ground ourselves, touch the pain and discomfort inside our trauma, and explore it gently. This requires building a tolerance for bodily and emotional discomfort and learning to stay present with it rather than trying to flee that discomfort.
Hmm.
So, with practice over time, this enables us to be more curious, more mindful, and less reflexive. And only then can growth and change occur.
So what's so important, and I think we see this in media and everything, is talking through the trauma helps heal the trauma. Not and it is it is uncomfortable, but growth happens when we're uncomfortable and we
Mhm.
understand, and not fleeing from it is important. But I also want to recognize that there might be times when you're not ready to confront it, and it might need some time. So finding that strength, courage, and time, and giving yourself that gift of, I am ready to confront it because I'm a strong person. I can deal with this. I can grow from this, and I can process this. And I think this is so important in understanding that. First, understanding that, let me go. And part of the healing is part of understanding it. Is let
Mhm.
me confront it. So if you are watching this and like, I don't understand this historical trauma, I don't understand what I might be trying to confront, that
Mhm.
is a great first step. That's a sense of curiosity. And the next step is, okay, let me understand what are the things that are passed down upon that I may have. Those All these companies that talk about unconscious bias training, all these companies that talk about these things, what are the threads that you can pull on to help sort of sort of attack this, love this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that um, I was reading I have like a certain number of workbooks that I work through with some of my healers. And just last night we were talking about change involves polarities. And
Mm.
we often go between these two polarities. On one side of like this feeling that we have for safety, right? We want to be safe, but then on the other side is this feeling of growth. And
Mm.
and growth can be exciting and familiar and like unfamiliar, right? And this is going what Resma's talking about. But then on the safety side, you want to be safe in what you do. So it allows us, like, it's so many people just say, I'm going to take a life that's very safe, right? I
Mhm.
work in the innovation space, so I've chosen a life of uncertainty, a lot of growth. Like every day something new is thrown at me. So it's like this polarity exists, but you can also go in between the two, right?
Mhm.
And this healing from trauma is figuring out how much growth is good for you, and you need to figure out how much safety your body needs and your soul
Yeah.
needs.
I love
And
that. I love how you said it too.
yeah, that wasn't even in the show notes. I just came up with that in my mind. Uh,
It's a
it's
good, a limited time.
I know, I know. It's Gestalt theory. If anybody is interested in that. So I just wanted to kind of bring this full circle here. Is that Resma is one of a series of experts who are homing in on this effect that trauma has on our lives. So other ones that you might be interested in reading more about or listening to their audiobook is Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote the book The Body Keeps Score, which is like the seminal text when it comes to
Mhm.
trauma. Dr. Peter Levine, who created the Somatic Healing Institute, and we're also still learning a lot about trauma, and therapists are still learning how to treat it. And
Mm.
so I'm just going to kind of throw out here. I put this up on. I'm going to put this in the show notes and send it out to all my social media. But one of my favorite teachers just put this out, and there's the National Institute for the Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine, or NICAMB. Is has this amazing and it's free if you watch it at the time of its broadcast. It's called the Advanced Master Program on the Treatment of Trauma, and you can also buy like the full package if you want to. I'm not trying to sell this. I'm just fascinated by this. And this is the latest research on how we're still starting to keep understanding trauma. Bessel van der Kolk's going to be there, Tara Brock, the person who brought this up. So it is so important that we're diving deeper into this and to know how it's showing up in our lives. So that's what I've got for today. I think maybe next time I might talk a little bit about my own healing journey, because I have been going on my healing journey, and this is a good kind of segue into that for next time.
Oh, so much vulnerability, so much growth, and just in this 15 minutes, gives you this important insights and leaves you with a sense of curiosity. Thank you so much, Amy, for
Of
the
course.
gift that you have given me and this and your community. Thank you for that gift. Also, I wanted to throw out um, a great comment from Trish. One of the best things I've done recently was reading Amy's book with my meetup group during quarantine. Her work is so powerful. Yes, Trish.
Yay!
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, you gave me a great segue into just sharing. Amy's audiobook is coming out is this
Oh,
week, and I wanted to celebrate that achievement. It's such an awesome thing. I
thank
love
you.
listening to books more than reading, and I
Oh,
am just this Amy, your impact into this world, into the work you're doing, the gifts you keep
yeah.
giving to the world is appreciated. So everyone check out Amy's audiobook. Go get it on
Thank
all your
you. It's
platforms.
gonna come out later this week, people. Um, so keep posted on that. I just it's an exciting thing, and if you liked hearing my voice and like hearing how I read off of a piece of paper like I did earlier today, you're gonna love the whole audiobook.
You're gonna love it regardless. Thank you,
I love it.
everyone.
It's gonna be good.
We're gonna see you next week with our next power up, and we're just finishing up our conversations around generational trauma. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
and
Thank you.
take care.
Take care. See you next week. Bye.